Entitlement reaches all walks of life, as you'll find out in this episode of Entitled People. Our first one is from Anonymous. My son is learning to drive, so sometimes I'll finish up work early and pick him up so he can drive home. Yesterday, the parking lot was fuller than usual, and this minivan kept driving around looking for a spot. They finally decided to squeeze in between me and the curb, adding up barely 2 inches from my passenger side mirror. Their child comes out, and this guy starts gesturing at me because obviously there's no way anyone is getting in either of our cars from the passenger sides. He rolls the window down and motions for me to do the same. The moment I do, he begins to berate me loudly and very aggressively, saying I should move from my spot so his kid can get in his car. Keep in mind, I'm in a parking spot, in a small car. He's in this big minivan, squeezed into this non-space. I just rolled my window back up and ignored him. Then I feel a thump, and look in my rearview mirror and see him walking back to his car. It legit felt like someone ran into me lightly. I didn't dare get out as I'm already a bit intimidated, and dude is obviously a bully after screaming at me to move for the past 5 minutes through a closed window. The guy pulls ahead, his kid gets in and they leave. I get out of my car and go around to the back and see a massive crack in the bumper of my brand new car, right in the center of what looks like a boot print. This is my first new car, ever. Barely a month into my 2-year lease, and this happens. Get a quote, nearly $4,000 to fix the bumper as it needs to be replaced. It was kicked so hard it actually broke some clips that it held onto, and this was the recommendation of the dealership as it was very loose. Unfortunately, as a leased car, this has to be fixed as soon as possible according to my contract. Go back to the school in hopes I can get some identifying info on the guy to file a report and recoup the cost through their insurance. We can clearly see the front of the van, but not the back where the license plate is because of where he is parked, ironically blocked from view by my car. Fast forward to today. I get to work and my boss calls me into her office. There was a complaint made yesterday about how rude I was, and that I was most likely driving under the influence. My boss is awesome. She knows full well there's no way I would do any of that, so she just gives me a heads up and that's it. It's almost 10 a.m. and I just answered a call. It was him, asking if disciplinary action had been taken yet. I interconnected my line to my bosses, so I had a witness, and the conversation was interesting. He had no idea it was me, and I was asking for the details from the encounter. He gives them, not realizing I filed a police report the day before that wasn't likely to go anywhere as I had no license plate number or name. So I just got emailed to me the guy's name, address, make, model, and year of the vehicle, and the license plate number. I just got off the phone with the police. I don't think he'll be happy to see them on his doorstep. Maybe he should have just been happy with vandalism instead of also trying to get me fired. Entitled people suck. Well, the best part is he'll be entitled to receiving charges for his actions and for acting so goddamn entitled, so maybe, after this whole situation, he'll learn a lesson, but I don't think he will. This next one is by Jadrian. Okay, so this isn't a recent story and occurred during the pandemic. A few things to note. My next door neighbor is the wealthiest person in the neighborhood, as far as we know. Before the pandemic, he was a reasonable guy and I never had a problem with save one party that got a little out of control. But for context, I will start this story before that day. This neighbor, who we will call Jack, lives in the house next door to mine with his long-term girlfriend. Let's call her Stacy. She's a gem of a person. Since before my father-in-law gave his house to my wife, he would hold crazy parties at his house. These parties would happen every weekend. He invited us to one when we moved in and we went to be polite, but it wasn't our thing, so we politely declined. He was still a reasonable guy and would say, "Come on, we'll have a blast!" But the wife and I would use our kids as an excuse and politely decline. He converted the first floor of his house into a nightclub, complete with an indoor swimming pool. One party will always stick out to me as the day we saw a tow truck remove a car from a brick wall. The driver was okay, but the party itself was massive. It looked like he invited the entire town. The next day he asked me if I would help him move a couch. The couch was thrown into the pool. I helped and we had a laugh about it. As I said, even with some of the wildest parties, not a bad guy. He at one point helped me clear out some trees that fell in the woods behind our houses. It was the pandemic that caused him to go off the deep end. My town was spared the worst of the pandemic. The schools shut down before orders from the state. Many businesses did the same. Jack, however, did not stop his partying. His parties were shut down several times until one day it looked like the entire police force showed up. They arrested everyone. They were all let go, but the parties were over and the good fun-loving guy was gone. He organized a protest with his friends and got a bunch of others who hated masks and went to the town hall. It was closed and they tried the country office. For some unknown reason, they went after a supermarket and harassed the workers. I think it was on Facebook and YouTube, but I may be confusing it with other such protests. Why these people choose to harass grocery stores is beyond me. Well, he ended up getting arrested again. We were still on speaking terms at this point. That would change when he and a buddy of his decided to race their overpriced cars through town. We got into a heated argument about it, and he took offense when I pointed out that the only reason he isn't in jail is that he's rich. Not my proudest moment. More recent events include calling the police on anyone that is having work done on their house, calling the police when anyone parks on the street, sending lawyers to town hall to disrupt the meetings, and most recently, parking 10 junk cars on the street with flat tires, wrapping a chain around a piece of construction equipment, and putting up a very vulgar sign. Oh, and his girlfriend usually comes over to apologize for his actions. I'm surprised that she hasn't broken up with him. She is the one to apologize for his actions and will offer to pay for any damages. They are still together from what I know, but I haven't seen her in a few weeks. My neighbor is the pinnacle of the entitled rich a-hole, in my opinion. The fact that you called them out that the only reason they're doing that stuff and not in jail is because they have money, you hit the nail on the head. And to be fair, I think that's probably what's going through their mind as well. They think they're invincible and can't be touched. And our final one is from Trying to Adult, Please Help. I am an office manager for a woodworking shop. There's not a lot of woodworking stations in the area, and as a whole, the woodworking community is pretty small and we're all friendly. The manager of another company, Wayne, got his start here and is still fishing buddies with one of our shop managers. We have two, Bob and Bill. It's tight-knit. We are looking for woodworkers with 3 to 5 years experience and have advertised for it. 2 weeks ago, I get a call and the guy, let's call him Nick, is peppering me about the position. I start to tell him we need experienced, and he cuts me off and says he wants the lead woodworker position. I try to tell him we don't have a lead woodworker position. Our woodworkers work for the shop manager, a position that is filled. But he keeps cutting me off to tell me about his experience. I'm simply the office manager receptionist. I tell him to send over his resume and we will review it and call him if we want to bring him in for an interview. Well, last Friday, he comes in with his resume. Despite us having on our doors since 2020, we are by appointment only. He fills out the application, keeps asking questions, but talks over our HR manager when she's trying to answer. He wants an interview right there. Bill comes out to tell him that he will review the resume and call him to let him know a good time to come in for an interview. Guy insists again that he wants a lead position. He's told that we don't work like that. He tried to argue with Bill, who tells him, I will call you. Nick leaves. Well, it turns out, Nick freelanced for us before in 2015. It was a pretty big project, and he kept derailing it by not taking direction and trying to order everyone else around. He went to work elsewhere when we kept him as freelance because we didn't have any other big projects coming up.
If you won't make me a full-time employee, I will go elsewhere.
Kind of fit. So Bill doesn't want him. On his resume, he listed Wayne's company as his last job. Bob calls Wayne, who could only say, "We would not rehire him." Another employee in the finishing department quietly warns Bill that Nick was texting him, bragging that he's going to be his boss. Finishing is a different department than woodworking. So we have decided not to interview him. He just called.
Hi, this is Nick. I want to schedule my interview for this week.
I tell him that we will call him when we are ready for the interview. He wants to talk to HR, who isn't in until 9:15. I send him to voicemail because I was too floored by the audacity. We just had a quick meeting to reaffirm that he is not a fit for our company culture. HR and the shop managers are still trying to figure out the most definitive way to tell him we will not hire him. It's one thing to be very on top of things, to constantly follow up, but one could also argue if a manager is point blank telling you that they will contact you, you should really accept that, instead of constantly pushing, especially when you have a history like this guy. Yeah. Alright, that's enough entitlement for the day. Well, that wraps up this episode of Entitled People. If you liked the video, please drop a like, share my content on all of your social media, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to hit that bell so you're notified every time I upload, and drop a comment down below. It really helps with the algorithm and helps new people find my channel. Thanks for watching, thanks to my patrons, have a great day and stay safe out there.